The first old man. I am now going to begin my story, said the old man, so please attend. This hind that you see with me is my wife. We have no children of our own. Therefore, I adopted the son of a favorite slave and determined to make him my heir. My wife, however, took a great dislike to both mother and child, which she concealed from me until too late. When my adopted son was about 10 years old, I was obliged to go on a journey. Before I went, I entrusted to my wife's keeping both the mother and child, and begged her to take care of them during my absence, which lasted a whole year. During this time, she studied magic in order to carry out her wicked scheme. When she had learnt enough, she took my son into a distant place and changed him into a calf. Then she gave him to my steward and told him to look after a calf that she had bought. She also changed the slave into a cow, which she sent to my steward. When I returned, I inquired after my slave and the child. "Your slave is dead," she said, "and as for your son, I have not seen him for 2 months, and I do not know where he is." I was grieved to hear of my slave's death, but as my son had only disappeared, I thought I should soon find him. 8 months, however, passed, and still no tiding of him. Then the feast of Bairam came. To celebrate it, I ordered my steward to bring me a very fat cow to sacrifice. He did so. I did not know that the cow he brought was my own unfortunate slave. I bound her, but just as I was about to kill her, she began to low piteously, and I saw that her eyes were streaming with tears. It seemed to me most extraordinary, and feeling pity, I ordered the steward to take her away and bring another. My wife, who was present, scoffed at my compassion, which made her malice of no avail. "What are you doing?" she cried. "Kill this cow. It is the best we have to sacrifice." To please her, I tried once more, but again the animal's lows and tears disarmed me. "Take her away," I said to the steward, "and kill her. I cannot." The steward killed the cow, but on skinning her found that she was nothing but bones, although she appeared so fat. I was vexed. "Keep her for yourself," I said to the steward, "and if you have a fat calf, bring that in her stead." In a short time he brought a very fat calf, which, although I did not know it, was my son. It tried hard to break its cord and come to me. It threw itself at my feet, with its head on the ground, as if it wished to excite my pity and begged me not to take away its life. I was even more surprised and touched at this action than I had been at the tears of the cow. "Go," I said to the steward, "take back this calf. Take great care of it, and bring me another in its place instantly." When my wife heard me say this, she at once cried out, "What are you doing, husband? Do not sacrifice any calf but this." "Wife," I answered, "I will not sacrifice this calf." And in spite of her remonstrances, I remained firm. I had another calf killed. This one was led away. The next day the steward asked to speak to me in private. "I have come," he said, "to tell you some news which I think you will like to hear. I have a daughter who knows magic. Yesterday, when I was leading back the calf which you refused to sacrifice, I noticed that she smiled and then directly afterward began to cry. I asked her why she did so. "Father," she answered, "this calf is the son of our master. I smile with joy at seeing him still alive, and I weep to think of his mother who was sacrificed yesterday as a cow. These changes have been brought by our master's wife, who hated the son and the mother." At these words, "O genie," continued the old man, "I leave you to imagine my astonishment. I went immediately with the steward to speak with his daughter myself. First of all, I went to the stable to see my son, and he replied in his dumb way to all my caresses. When the steward's daughter came, I asked her if she could change my son back to his proper shape. "Yes, I can," she replied, "on 2 conditions. One is that you will give him to me for my husband, and the other that you will let me punish the woman who changed him into a calf." To the first condition, I answered, I agree with all my heart, and I will give you an ample dowry. To the second, I also agree, only I beg you will spare her life. That will I do, she replied. I will treat her as she treated your son. She took a vessel of water and pronounced over it some words I did not understand. Then, on throwing the water over the calf, he became immediately a young man once more. My son, my dear son, I exclaimed, kissing him in a transport of joy. This kind maiden has rescued you from a terrible enchantment, and I am sure that in our gratitude you will marry her. He consented joyfully, but before they were married, the young girl changed my wife into a hind, and it is she that you see before you. I wished her to have this form rather than a stranger one, so we could see her in the family without repugnance. Since then, my son has become a widower and has gone traveling. I am now going in search of him, and not wishing to confide my wife to the care of other people, I am taking her with me. Is not this a most marvelous tale? Why, it is indeed, said the genie, and because of it, I grant to you the third part of the punishment of this merchant. When the first old man had finished his story, the second, who was leading the 2 black dogs, said to the genie, I am going to tell you what happened to me, and I am sure you will find my story even more astonishing than the one to which you have been listening. But when I have related it, will you grant me also the third part of the merchant's punishment? Yes, replied the genie, provided your story surpasses that of the hind. With this agreement, the second old man began in this way. The second old man. Great prince of the genii, you must know that we are 3 brothers, these 2 black dogs and myself. Our father died, leaving us each 1,000 sequins. With this sum, we all 3 took up the same profession and became merchants. A short time after we had opened our shop, my eldest brother, one of these 2 dogs, resolved to travel in foreign countries for the sake of merchandise. With this intention, he sold all he had and bought merchandise suitable to the voyages he was about to take. He set out and was away a whole year. At the end of this time, a beggar came to my shop. Good day, I said. Good day, he answered. Is it possible that you do not recognize me? Then I looked at him closely and saw he was my brother. I made him come into my house and asked him how he had fared in his enterprises. Do not question me, he replied. Seeing me, you see all I have. It would but renew my trouble to tell of all the misfortunes that have befallen me in a year and have brought me to this state. I shut up my shop and paid him every attention, taking him to the bath and giving him my most beautiful robes. I examined my accounts and found that I had doubled my capital. That is, I now possess 2,000 sequins. I gave my brother half, saying, Now, brother, you can now forget your losses. He accepted the money with joy, and we lived together as we had before. Some time afterward, my second brother wished also to sell his business and travel. My eldest brother and I did all we could to dissuade him, but it was of no use. He joined a caravan and set out. He came back at the end of a year in the same state as the elder brother. I took care of him, and I had 1,000 sequins to spare. I gave them to him, and he reopened his shop. One day my 2 brothers came to me to propose that we should make a journey and trade. At first I refused to go. You traveled, I said, and what did you gain? But they came to me repeatedly, and having held out for 5 years, I at last gave way. But when they had made their preparations and began to buy the merchandise we needed, they found they had spent every piece of the 1,000 sequins I had given each of them. I did not reproach them. I divided my 6,000 sequins, giving 1,000 to each and keeping 1 for myself, and the other 3 I buried in the corner of my house. We brought merchandise, loaded a vessel with it, and set forth with a favorable wind. After 2 months' sailing, we arrived at a seaport where we disembarked and did a great trade. Then we bought the merchandise of the country, and we were just going to set sail once more when I was stopped on the shore by a beautiful, though very poorly dressed woman. She came up to me, kissed my hand, and implored me to marry her and take her on board. At first I refused, but she begged so hard and promised to be such a good wife to me that at last I consented. I got her some beautiful dresses, and having married her, we embarked and set sail. During the voyage, I discovered so many good qualities in my wife that I began to love her more and more. But my brothers began to be jealous of my prosperity and to plot against my life. One night, when we were sleeping, they threw my wife and myself into the sea. My wife, however, was a fairy, and so she did not let me drown, but transported me to an island. When the day dawned, she said to me, "When I saw you on the seashore, I took a great fancy to you and wished to try your good nature, so I presented myself in the disguise you saw. Now I have rewarded you by saving your life, but I am very angry with your brothers, and shall not rest till I have taken their lives." I thanked the fairy for all she had done for me, but begged her not to kill my brothers. I appeased her wrath, and in a moment she transported me from the island where we were to the roof of my house and disappeared a moment afterward. I went down, opened the doors, and dug up the 3,000 sequins which I had buried. I went to the place where my shop was, opened it, and received from my fellow merchants congratulations on my return. When I went home, I saw 2 black dogs who came to meet me with sorrowful faces. I was much astonished, but the fairy who reappeared said to me, "Do not be surprised to see these dogs. They are your 2 brothers. I have condemned them to remain for 10 years in these shapes." Then, having told me where I could hear news of her, she vanished. The 10 years are nearly past, and I am at the road to find her. As in passing, I met this merchant and the old man with the hind, and I stayed with them. This is my history, O Prince of Genii. Do you think it a most marvelous one? "Yes, indeed," replied the Genii, "and I will give up to you the 1/3 of the merchant's punishment." Then the 3rd old man began the same request the other 2 had, and the genie promised him the last 1/3 of the merchant's punishment if his story surpassed both the others. So he told his story to the genii, but I cannot tell you what it was, as I do not know. But I do know it was even more marvelous than either of the other genies, for the genie was astonished and said to the 3rd old man, "I will give up to you the 1/3 part of the merchant's punishment." He ought to thank all 3 of you for having interested yourselves in his favor, but for you he would be here no longer. So saying, he disappeared. To the great joy of the company, the merchant did not fail to thank his friends, and then each went on his way. The merchant returned to his wife and child, and passed the rest of his days happily with them. "But, sire," added Scheherazade, "however beautiful are the stories I have just told you, they cannot compare with the story of the fisherman."